Hello, it's Paul here, and I'm talking about A Course in Miracles again. Just wanted to make a shorter video. It's a little bit of a follow-up to the video that I did about free will. I found personally that after that video, it really had quite a big effect on me myself, because it really clarified areas where I'm not recognizing my own free will and I'm not allowing other people to have their freedom. So I just wanted to sort of say a few things about this, and also just to clarify a slight difference between free will and choice. Jesus says that in the Course in Miracles that in reality, in heaven, you have the freedom to create in an unlimited way, and that's your freedom of your will, is that it can create without any kind of limits. But he also says that your mind can elect which authority to be under, and it can actually choose whether to will like God and create stuff, or to dream and project. So you do have a choice, and the choice that you have is really between the two thought systems. It's like kind of all or nothing, the whole of the ego or the whole of the Holy Spirit's mind. But when you're in this world, what I'm finding is that it's just very helpful to just grab a hold of this idea of having free will, even if you interpret it as meaning that you've got choices, or that your will has something to do with this level of existing, because just even the concept of this, I think, is helpful. So if within myself I can acknowledge that there is a perfect freedom, and this perfect freedom is free from the freedom of everybody else, in a sense that I have my own choice. Everything that I choose happens. Anything that I don't choose does not happen. And this is reflected in the myself is ruler of the universe. It says that, anything that, even in this world, anything that I choose must happen, and anything I don't want to happen does not happen. And this is the responsibility that I must own. And by taking this responsibility, I'm actually going to acknowledge the full freedom of my will, which is very authoritative and decisive and certain, and totally not a victim in any way. And it doesn't believe in being caused by anyone else, because other people are completely free as well. They have their own freedom. And we all have independent free will, because God has given independence to the souls that he created, and each of those souls has their own freedom to choose whether to will freely or whether to imprison their will and become unwilling. So everything in this world where we're being unwilling, or experiencing victimhood, or we think we're being attacked, or something's happening to us from outside ourselves and it's causing us, all of those things are to do with our own unwillingness to accept the freedom that's in us. And so we're sort of saying, well, I'm not the one that's choosing this. It must be somebody else or something else. There's another cause out there, an external cause. And there really is not. So if within myself there is this perfect sort of freedom to be able to will anything, which is very creative. We're supposed to be learning how to be creative and freely creative. If my will is free enough that it can unlimitedly create, and if my mind also has the freedom to decide whether to believe in willingness or whether to believe in unwillingness, And within the scope of all the ways that I can possibly be unwilling, which accounts for pretty much everything in this world, there are choices to be made here in order to go from my state of unwillingness back up to a willing, free kind of experience where I'm totally owning the freedom that God's given, and I'm totally willing to do God's will freely. And so what I'm finding is this is just a very helpful tool just in life, and trying to forgive people and trying to wake up and trying to apply the Course to my experiences and the way that I'm interacting with people, is to just acknowledge this idea. I have total freedom. They have total freedom. So, and because it says that God, who encompasses all being, nevertheless created separate beings who have everything individually, regardless of how you interpret that, and I take it pretty literally, just the acknowledging that there is somebody else, there is another person out there, and there's also me, and the two of us have shown up inside a dream that we both have put here, and now we look like bodies, but we're really spirits. If I can just acknowledge that that person is just as free as I am, they have their own choice. It's totally up to them to choose whether to accept God's truth or not. It's totally none of my business. My choices are totally none of their business. Doesn't matter what they choose. I shouldn't be having any kind of sense of controlling them or telling them what to do or bossing them around or trying to stop them from doing things, or not kind of allowing them, not accepting them, not letting them be free to do whatever they want, even if they're choosing hurting themselves or being an asshole or whatever. whatever they're using their freedom for, to try to show various forms of unwillingness or whatever it is, just acknowledging they have that freedom is really helping me to let go of all the forms of unwillingness in myself. So it's really been helping me to become clearer and more detached, just by the simple idea they are free of my choices. My choices are free of their choices. The two of us are independently free. Whatever they choose, that's up to them, and I can't stop them in any way from making those choices. That really kind of sobers you up, and it sort of says, okay, if they don't want this information, there's nothing I can do about it. If they are choosing some poor choices or whatever it is I think I don't like them doing, I have to let go of that, because that means that I'm actually denying that they have freedom. I'm not letting them be free and not acknowledging the freedom in them. So that means I'm not acknowledging it in myself. Because whatever applies to your brother applies to you equally. There's no state in which something applies to me that doesn't apply to them. That's the ego. So it's like all or nothing. Either both of us are innocent or we're both guilty. Either both of us are free or we're both imprisoned. So if I want to be free, I have to acknowledge that they are free also. You're free also. You're free of me. Thank goodness. Free of me, free of my stupid choices, free of my independent mistakes, and therefore it's up to you whether you believe stuff I say, it's up to you. Whether you agree, it's up to you. You know, what you choose to believe. And if we can get this idea that kind of within ourselves there's a place where there's perfect freedom, where there's a complete noisy truck which is freely passing by, where there's a complete acknowledgement of your own total freedom, it also brings with it responsibility, because now you can't be saying that you're free and not be responsible, because the only way you can be free is to own your freedom. So now you're in the hot seat, you're controlling, or you're in the ownership of that freedom. You can't say I am free unless you're like saying I choose this freedom and I do not choose for anything else to be true of me. So freedom entails responsibility automatically. So now that means every single thing that I experience has to be something I chose. Every single thing that happens to you, you have to have chosen it. Every single thing that occurs has to have been by your will or by your choice. Nothing can happen to you against your will or without your consent, including death. Nobody dies without their own consent. You have to have, at some point, you have to have chosen. It's almost like saying this whole world couldn't exist and doesn't exist and never did exist until somebody willed and chose to make it happen. It's not sitting here by itself. God didn't put it here. We collectively decided to make it. And so everything that it does has come from our choice and our decision. If death happens or sickness happens, we have to have chosen it. These things don't just show up on their own. The world doesn't like have sort of a special set of its own rules, with laws of physics or ego laws that are illusions, that this isn't a holographic world. Things aren't things in their own right, they're just symbols of decisions we make elsewhere. So this free will comes with a lot of responsibility, and it goes way beyond normal levels of responsibility, like, oh, I was aware that I chose this, but I didn't want that to happen, and this isn't happening, I didn't want that. And, you know, all these kind of barriers that we put up that say, this was not part of my freedom, I didn't make this happen, I didn't choose it, this must be happening against my freedom, therefore I'm going to fight with it. And then you start getting into a fight with what's happening based on not being aware that you chose it, because you're in denial, and that makes you unconscious, unaware that you did this to yourself. So we have to own everything that we're choosing. Everything, not just little things, not just the things that we think we have a choice over, but absolutely everything. Otherwise, if we believe that there is some other chooser, some other prison guard, some other cause or authority or influence or some other will that is capable of changing you against your will and is capable of doing something you don't want to happen, those are all beliefs in this is not part of my will, which really is you saying, I disown this aspect of what I'm experiencing, and I will only allow it to be credited to somebody else or laws of physics or whatever. It's actually a disowning. We have to own up to total 100% responsibility for choosing everything that we experience, including every state of the body. The mind is responsible for every condition of the body. All forms of sickness can't even show up unless you choose them. Death can't even happen unless you choose it. You can't go unconscious unless you are blocking awareness of your freedom, which is denial of having chosen it. So I'm just finding this very useful, because now if within myself there's a place that's totally free and has to be like 100% in the hot seat and responsible for everything that I experience, anything else that seems to suggest otherwise in my experience of other people and my relationships and how I see the world and stuff, anything else that suggests that I'm not completely free of or free from everyone else and their choices, free from all forms of suffering, free from every misperception of ego, free from death and sickness, and free from the world, anything else in me that says otherwise must be a form of me disowning my freedom. It has to be a way that I'm trying to displace myself externally, away from myself, disowning myself, because you are freedom. You're literally freedom itself. So if you give up your freedom and you give your freedom away, you give power to others, you believe that other people are supposed to choose for you or save you or approve of you, or you're supposed to please them or make them proud or get their attention or have somebody say, yes, you are okay, you're lovable, or anything like that, that puts the choosing and the freedom outside of yourself into the hands of somebody else. That is a mistaken perception, and it means that you definitely are disowning yourself and disowning your freedom, and you're not owning up to the responsibility of being 100% the chooser or the free-willed being that is not at the effect of anything except for God. And so we have to really own up to this shit. So anything else that I see myself doing, if I see myself sort of disapproving of somebody or trying to force somebody to make a choice, or I don't like what they've done, or I'm trying to control a person, or I can't let them be the way they are, or I think that they're making big mistakes, and so I'm going to put this big judgment on them to say you're wrong and you're bad and you're sinful and guilty. All of that stuff is all disowning of freedom. It's all attempting to assert that the other person's not free, that they don't have the right to have their own free will choice and to show up however they please and do whatever they want. None of my goddamn business. And if that means they want to color their hair and have tattoos and explore strange things that you don't think are natural or whatever it is, if they choose it, it's none of your damn business. It's their freedom. It's their life. God has given everybody free will and honors and respects it at all times. Jesus says that his will is as free as yours, and even God wouldn't go against it, because God has given you total freedom to will and create. What you're actually doing when you block and deny the freedom and the choices of others is indirectly blocking their freedom. And you're sort of saying, I don't believe that you should have freedom. I think that you should stay in a box. I think you should be imprisoned. I think you should be condemned for doing the wrong choice. Or we just get really lost in all this stuff, and it's really my stuff. It's my choosing to pretend that I don't have freedom, putting it onto others, putting the responsibility for choosing onto others, and then getting into kind of a victim thing where it's like, why aren't you loving me? Why aren't you choosing for me? You have to be the one that saves me. This is all idol worship and stuff. You are... I look to another person to fulfill me, or I want somebody to love me for myself so that I can know that I'm lovable enough, and I need my parents to approve of everything I do. I need to get their attention, their affection, and their approval, and make them proud of me. You don't need anybody to be proud of you. That's totally fake. It's a denial of your freedom, and the fact that within yourself you have inestimable value, which means to God your worth is unlimited, and He's already agreeing and has created you as a very highly valuable being. You don't need anybody else's certification or approval. You don't need other people's attention. You don't need people to love you. When you're in your certainty of your free will, and you're owning the truth about yourself, and you're allowing and letting go of everyone else, letting everybody just fuck the hell up if they want to, let the whole world go to shit if it wants to. It already has. It's already a shithole. You've got to let it go, otherwise you attach yourself to it. And these attachments are actually forms of artificial bonds that form between you and others, between your free self and other free selves. The ego comes in and says, there's something about you that is caused by somebody else's will, somebody else's choice or responsibility, and therefore there's something coming from them to you that controls you and changes you and affects you and makes you different and defines who you are. And as you believe in these causes coming from other people, in your mind, it actually forms a kind of a connection or a bridge or like a cord that joins your experience of reality to the other person, and then you feel kind of exposed to them, and you start feeling vulnerable and like they can attack you, and that you sort of opened yourself up to them energetically, and you can't get them off your mind because you're terrified of what they're going to do to you. And it kind of creates like a little funnel that goes between your mind and them, not in a healthy way, not as part of sharing and oneness, but an ego construct that fakes the idea that somehow causality is taking place between you and another person, that your free will is being changed by another free will, or vice versa. And it's an illusion. But when you believe in it, you can actually feel in yourself this sort of sense of, I'm opened up and I've become exposed, and now I'm vulnerable to attack. And you feel like you can't get the person off of your mind, and they keep coming back into your thoughts because you keep having these fearful thoughts of attack and anticipation of threat and danger, and it literally makes you feel like you're joined to this other person, as though they've caused you, and somehow they're they've created a sort of a channel that comes from them into you to implement the changes that they see fit to put in you. When you sever those ties and you reaffirm and re-own and reclaim the responsibility for your freedom, and you recognize again, they are not the cause of me. God's my cause. Every single brother is free, equally free, on the same level. I don't cause them. They do not cause me. We're not the cause of each other. There's no two people that are the cause of each other. The only thing that you've caused are your creations in heaven, and the things that you've made that you're responsible for. You're responsible for having made your body and your sickness and your dream and your experience. Nobody else is responsible for that. You've chosen it yourself, so you've got to own up to it. And this means honesty. It means a lot of honesty. You've got to really be willing to look at this very honestly and without hiding from this freedom that you have. Because if you don't have a little willingness to kind of own up to being the one who chose, and you're still sort of lost in the fantasy of other people chose this, and other people are responsible for my life and my existence, and other people determine whether I'm good enough or not, and whether I'm lovable, and what my value is, and how affected I am, and what form I'm taking based on what they chose for me. If you get lost in all that stuff and you're not having a willingness to honestly look at the fact that you have been the one to do this to yourself, and you're the one with all the choice, all the causality, all the decision to suffer, then you're not going to get into your willingness. There has to be an increase in willingness in order for you to take back those attachments and sever those ties and reclaim your freedom. You can't reclaim your freedom without being willing to do so. You have to want to be free. And only you can accept that. You can only accept your freedom willingly. It can't be forced on you. God doesn't force you to have to comply with his will. You're supposed to get to where you are freely, willingly wanting to be a co-creator with God, and you do so joyfully and happily because you've accepted that it absolutely makes you so happy and joyful, and it's natural. And so you've got to go from unwillingness, which displaces all responsibility and ownership for everything onto everybody else other than yourself, and go back towards willing to be free, willing to acknowledge your freedom, and that has to mean acknowledging the freedom of others. Therefore, you let go of them, and you detach from them, and you stop controlling everything. This is what happens when you don't believe that you're free, and you don't believe that you are not imprisoned, and you don't think you're allowed or acceptable, and you can't accept yourself or allow yourself to be loved by God. You will move into a mindset of projection and reversal of levels and reversal of cause and effect, and it will... I'm just going to open the window. It's getting hot. It's kind of like you lose your footing, and you slip into externalizing and giving away all of your power. Because freedom is also power, so if you give your freedom away and you sort of put it into other people's hands, and you believe that they're supposed to save you and fix you and help you and um, choose for you and be responsible for you, and you do everything for you, and all this kind of external dependency. You literally are giving your power to them. You're saying, I give you the power to choose for me. I give you the power to decide whether I'm lovable enough. I give you the power to cause me to be sick or to make me dead. I give you the power, and then by displacing your power onto the hands of others, you now perceive that you've got less power, they have more power. Now you become afraid because it looks like they have power over you. But then you kind of want them to have power over you because you hope that if they will choose for you in a way that you like or prefer, by giving you whatever you're trying to get from them, then it's kind of like you win the bet, or you win the deal that you made to say, I'm going to give you this power and this freedom to choose for me, and you better fucking damn well choose the thing that I want. And if they do, then you're like, whoa, I love you so much, and you're my idol, I worship you, thank you for saving me and giving me all this stuff that I wanted from you, which was exactly what I should have chosen myself. But if they don't, they don't comply with your wish, if you've given away your freedom and your responsibility for choice and put it in their hands, and now they use that sort of separated off freedom to choose something that you don't want them to choose, now it's like, what the fuck? Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you attacking me? Why are you giving me stuff I don't want? Why aren't you saving me? Hurry up and fucking save me, you idiot, and love me already. You know, we get into these ridiculous states of mind of dependency where we want other people to save us and live for us and choose for us and wake us up for us and give us all the truth and make us be awake and force us to be happy, and you know, and not just people, also idols and objects and possessions and toys and money and things and status and all these things that we think are externally going to save us, and we make them our salvation. Like, if I get this, I'll be saved. If they do this to me, I'll be happy. But think about that. If somebody does something to you, even if it's positive and rewarding, and even if it seems to be what you want, you're still in a dynamic of, they're doing this to me, they're making me change, they're causing me. And that is victimhood. That's still the same dynamic as what happens when people do stuff you don't want. So you have to get away from this whole belief, this whole system of perceiving where you're dependent on anyone for anything, whether it's positive or negative, and you detach from everybody's damn opinion of you. You don't give a shit what anyone thinks about you or what they choose or what they say you should or shouldn't be doing, and you step back and you say, I am responsible for choosing what I'm going to experience, and I am free of everything else, and I am not going to find my happiness by putting it into the hands of other people and letting them decide for me whether I'm happy or not. I'm going to be the one that chooses to be happy in defiance of any reason why you might not be. I'm going to give myself the freedom. No one else is going to forgive me for me. I don't need anybody else's freaking forgiveness. You're not supposed to seek for other people to forgive you. Nobody else can forgive you. This is all about self-forgiveness. You're the one who's attacked yourself. You're the one who has put yourself in a box, in a prison, and done this to yourself. You are the one who needs to lift away the chains and the barriers that you've put in place to make yourself trapped and limited and imprisoned. Nobody else can do it for you. Even if you hurt somebody, or you do something wrong, or you break something, or whatever it is, and then if you get into a mode where you're like, I feel guilty, and I'm not going to feel innocent until they forgive me, and now you put your whole life into their hands. If they don't forgive you, you're totally screwed. And oftentimes, most of the time, they will not forgive you. And now you're like hanging from a thread, hoping that this person's going to let you off the hook at some point and say, oh yes, you've been pardoned. And now because you're pardoned and they approve of you, now you're going to be free. Oh, finally I get permission to be free. You had that ability all the time to choose it yourself. You don't need these other props and external things to like be go-betweens or choosers of why and when you become free. They don't have that ability. You keep giving that away, putting it in their hands and saying, hey, you decide for me whether I'm in prison or not. You don't want that. You don't. What you're doing there is you're literally disowning the responsibility that you're supposed to have yourself to choose your own freedom, to align yourself with free will, to heaven is a choice I must make myself. God is not going to yank me out into reality against my will. God respects your free will. So when you sort of start making other people out to be the ones who hold your innocence in their hands, like if they don't forgive you, then you're going to be guilty forever and ever. You got to get past that. I had a really big lesson in this in my life where I had hurt somebody by accident and became terribly, terribly guilty and gave all my power to them and thought of them as having power over me and capable of possessing me and hurting me and getting revenge, and I was never going to be free of this pain until they would somehow say, oh, I forgive you now. I had to learn, I had to realize that even if everybody else is accusing the shit out of you and thinks you're guilty and calls you a sinner and is attacking you and beating you up or whatever they're doing to punish you for what you did, you at some point have to realize it's not up to them to decide whether or not I'm innocent and forgiven or whether I'm guilty. And I'm going to choose to be innocent and free and forgiven in spite of everybody else, including the people that have been affected. I'm not going to wait around for everybody else to determine whether or not I'm forgiven. You have to choose it for yourself. You have to not allow other people to put you in prisons. You have to let yourself off the hook. You have to forgive yourself. It's self-forgiveness, not other people's forgiveness. You don't need any approval or permissions or anything. You've got to grant yourself the right to choose, I am no longer guilty, I'm innocent. And no matter what anybody else says or thinks, they can fuck off. It's none of their damn business. I don't care if they're still in a state of not forgiving me or you or whatever. It's a choice. You have to realize that you're responsible for choosing whether you believe that you're innocent or guilty. And you have that freedom. And you should not give that freedom to other people. You should not lose it. You need to use that freedom and that willingness. And sometimes it takes for getting into situations where other people are highly condemning and hurtful and abusive and having power over you, and you feel like a victim and you feel shit and you don't feel like you deserve love and you feel sinful and ashamed or whatever, to get to a point where you will say, okay, this is enough. How long do I have to suffer? How long do I have to be in prison? How long is it going to be until I finally get permission to be free and permission to be forgiven? You have that freedom now. You've always had it. You don't have to suffer for 100 years before you finally acknowledge that you've been found innocent by God Himself. He is the only one to judge, or Holy Spirit judges what's true and false about you, and His verdict is always that you're innocent. It's always that you have not really sinned. It's always that you did not do anything to anybody else. It's always that nobody else has ever done anything to you. It's always that you are free and forgiven and do not deserve to suffer and do not deserve punishment and do not deserve to be unhappy. This is God's evaluation of you. He's never ever going to sort of say, sorry, that wasn't a good enough lifetime, you weren't helpful enough, you were too selfish, and I'm going to send you to hell now. That's absolute bullshit. That's totally the ego's thought system. God permanently finds you innocent. He doesn't even believe that you've ever even done anything. So you've got to get to that place too, and you have to do that for yourself, and the only way you can do that is by owning your free will, owning the freedom that you have to choose and that you have chosen, and you can choose again, and then using that, exercising that freedom in total defiance of the whole world to reclaim the truth about yourself that only you need to believe. You don't have to convince anybody else of the truth about you because you're free of them. You don't have to convince them to forgive you or let you off the hook or choose what you are or make you valuable. They don't have any say in it. They don't have any say in who and what you are as a free-willed being of God that is already perfect. There's nothing that you can do to change that truth either. Underneath your unwillingness is your perfect innocence, even if you deny it. And unwillingness is nothing else other than the attempt to deny that you're free and to deny that you are very willing and to deny your innocence, even if you are totally scapegoating the crap out of everybody else and blaming everything on everybody else and not being responsible at all and trying to die and want to position yourself as an attackable target and make yourself a victim and throw yourself under a bus. Sometimes literally all of that is just denial of the freedom that God has given you. You're just not accepting it. You're just not allowing it. You're not giving yourself permission to be free. You have to choose to acknowledge and want and will to be free again, and it's nobody else's business. Nobody can take it from you. You can't really give it to anyone. Nobody can stop you from choosing it. You have not stopped having it, and even if you try to give it away, it's still in you. So you might as well acknowledge it, because you still are freely choosing everything, and everything that happens is coming from your free will choice. So if you're going to pretend that you don't have that freedom while you still do, and if you're going to pretend to be not choosing what happens to you while you actually are still choosing it, now you're going to start experiencing the effects of willing against yourself, being unconscious and unaware that you've chosen it. And you're going to then look to other things to blame the causality on. You're going to say, I didn't choose this, must have been that. I didn't want this, must have been that. This person must have done this to me. I didn't want them to do this. It's not true. You are fully free, and you have to own that. And that means total responsibility. And that total responsibility is freedom. And that freedom sets you free from not only the effects and influences of others and the world and laws of physics and the whole everything to do with the ego dream. It empowers you. You get back all of the power that you've given to other people, that you wanted them to choose for you. You know, if you don't want to be afraid, don't give your power away, because if you give it away, you will see yourself as having less power and others as having more power, and the power that you see in them, which is yours, excuse me, the power that you see in other people that seems bigger than your power is your power, and because you've given it to them, you now feel like a little mouse. They seem like a big scary monster only because you don't realize that the power that you see in them is actually yours, and you've displaced it and projected it. So now you're afraid of yourself. You're afraid of your own power because you see it as not in you, and it's now out there, and now it seems to be willing against you, capable of doing something to you. And then you become afraid of it, and you think, I can't do anything about this. I can't go up against this great big power that's outside me, so because it's bigger than I am. It has more power than I do. And then you get into victimhood, and you feel helpless and powerless. You have to re-own that power and realize it's not somebody else's power. It is not their choice. They don't have power over you. They don't have the ability to decide for you if you're happy or not, or do things to you that you don't want. It's your power that you've let go of, and you've displaced it onto other people, and now you're seeing it as an enemy only because you don't want it. So you've got to own up to that you've tried to get rid of your freedom by making yourself a victim and making yourself be little and small and weak and helpless, so that your power looks bigger than you and separate from you, so that you won't be able to fend it off, and you'll just have to die by its hand. This is how people choose to die. They totally displace all of themselves and all their freedom and all their power and all their choice outside of themselves, make it look like another will, another free will that is a big scary monster that has abilities and causality and a mind of its own, and that it can then decide for you, what's left of you, which isn't much, what you are going to be and experience. And when you totally disown that, and you sort of lay down passively and say, I have no power to do anything, I have no choice, no free will, all of the power goes external, and then you become attacked by it. It looks like other people, it looks like laws of physics and biology and diseases and things, but it's not. It's your mind killing itself through this disowning and displacement and externalizing and switching around cause and effect, so that your will comes back at you and hurts you. Death is just another big ass example of irresponsibility, dishonesty, not wanting to be free, unwillingness, unconsciousness, and choosing to do all of that on purpose. It's a choice. This is how people consent to death. If you don't own up to your freedom, and you put your freedom and your power into external things, you are making them have power over you, and those things will then, or that power through them, you will attack yourself indirectly through the world, through other people, through causes and disasters, to make it look like you didn't choose this because you totally disowned all choice and all freedom. This is how everybody dies. This is how everybody becomes sick and suffers. And if you don't want that, you don't have to do that. It's not inevitable. It is not fate. It's not required. Go the other way. Go towards life. Go towards freedom. Go towards being free from any other external cause. Free from acting against yourself, because if there's even a little bit of your will that you separate off and put into somebody else's hands, that will is going to attack the rest of your will, and you will experience it as attack and conflict and war and suffering and hurtful, because you're hurting yourself. What's in you, if you take what's in you and you put it out there and you think of it as not yourself and not part of you, it becomes your enemy. Now you're your only enemy. You have to reclaim that. So that really means all the stuff that's in your shadow or in your unconscious that you project, all your guilt, all your sin and hatred and everything else, it is not outside you. It's actually in your mind still, but you have pretended that it's out there by projecting it and trying to be separate from it, and you've attacked it and you keep trying to get rid of it, and you try to accuse other people of it, so you disown it. That enemy is in you. It's yourself. It's your will acting against itself. You have to undo that separation and re-own the stuff that you've put out there and reintegrate. Jesus says that the Course is about integration. This is what it means. Bringing back all the parts of you, all the power, all the freedoms, all the choice, all of the independence and the free will that you have just dumped on the world and pretended that it's acting against you. If you get to the point where you are 100% responsible for everything that happens, and you only choose life, and you only choose happiness, and you only will with God, and you only choose your freedom, and you stop the billions of ways that we sort of accuse other people of having power over us and stuff, you can't be dead. Death can't happen to you unless you will it against yourself. It's a choice. Death is a free will choice. And I think, as I said in the other video at the end, just to kind of wrap up here, there is no force or choice or will or power or causality outside of you making you be anything, causing you any kind of effects. Even God respects your freedom. Therefore, you are 100% responsible for every single thing that you experience, including whether you're sick, whether you die, whether you're healthy, whether you're happy or sad, whether you are alive or dead, or suffering, or anywhere in between. It's all your choice. So it's just a spectrum of willingness or unwillingness. And that means that the only reason why you are in this dream, and the only reason why you're not with God, is because of your free will. You have to get to this responsibility at some point. You've chosen not to be aware of God's presence. You've chosen to be in a body. You've put yourself there. You wanted to. You willed it. You try to oppose your freedom and your will and project yourself away from heaven into the dream. And the only thing keeping you here, if there's no other causes and nobody else can choose for you, and the world does not choose for you, and you don't orchestrate events to hurt yourself, there's nothing keeping you here. You are completely free of all chains and bonds and bindings and causes and imprisonments and reasons why you can't this and you can't that. Nothing your holiness cannot do. You are unlimited. Therefore, it's your choice and your free will choice whether or not to stay here or go back to God. He's not going to pull you out, even though he would like for you to come back. He's not going to force you back into reality. Nobody's hurled into reality. And also, nothing is keeping you in the dream other than yourself. And so this is the core truth. This is the key to freedom from all illusions and all relationship problems and all ways that we control people and try to coerce them and block things and resist things that happen, and all forms of judgment and all attack thoughts, all forms of projection, all forms of illness and sickness, every form of suffering, all fights and squabbles and arguments, every war and conflict is all unwillingness to be free, and the disowning of will, the displacing of will to the external, to make it will against yourself. So if you just hold on to this one tool and just remember, use this for your forgiveness. I got to get to where I'm completely responsible for everything that I'm choosing and experiencing. So what is it about this upset or this interaction or this relationship? Where am I not letting them be free? Why aren't I acknowledging my freedom? Why aren't I letting them go? How is it that I'm attached to them and I'm controlling them and I won't let them be the way they want to be? Why am I trying to prevent them? Why can't I accept that they may choose to die in this lifetime? Why is it that I can't allow them the freedom to experience whatever they're choosing, even if I really disagree with it? Why do I disagree with it? Why do I even have an opinion about what they're doing? Why is it any of my business if they're free and God created them free and we're equal brothers and we're both free? Why am I having any say or trying to have any say in what they do or think or how they live? These are the kinds of questions you got to ask yourself if you want to reclaim your freedom and own up to your responsibility to be free. You've got to be willing to look at, how am I not being free? How am I denying freedom? What is it that I'm doing that is preventing other people from being free? How am I creating artificial connections to people to try to manipulate them and pull the strings and treat them like puppets? And where am I being a controlling, domineering asshole that doesn't want other people to choose for themselves? Why am I not giving people space and giving them time and letting them get on with it? And why can't I accept my freedom? Remember, anything you think about other people, you must be thinking about yourself. If they're not free, nor are you. If you don't like what they're doing, you don't like what you're doing. If you can't accept them, you don't accept yourself. Where is it that I'm not letting myself be free? Where is it that I'm not choosing my freedom? Where am I not being responsible? Why don't I want to be with God? And why am I putting that onto everybody else and accusing them of it instead of doing it myself? Why aren't I choosing it myself? And creating all these stories and these accusations and lies about other people as to why they aren't getting with it and doing the right program. You gotta be authentic and be honest about it's your responsibility. You have to choose it yourself. Other people's lives are none of your business. You gotta let go of the whole world. Let it be. Be free. Let it be free so you can be free. Otherwise, if you're attached to anything in this world and you're trying to say, I have power over that, or that has power over me, that forms an attachment. You're holding on. You're trying to control. That means from a higher level, you're reaching down into the world, grabbing hold of the dream and keeping yourself tied to it. Guarantee of reincarnation. You can't totally go back to the fullness of heaven while you have attachments to things in this world. You have to set it free and be totally free of it, willingly choosing it. Otherwise, you're going to come back because you'll be like, I kind of miss having a body, and I'm not quite done controlling my spouse, and I couldn't let my kids make their own choices, so I didn't like how those politicians made those decisions, and I hated that team, and they shouldn't have won, and things like that. Whatever it is, if we're not letting go and letting the freedom be the truth, that binds you to this world and brings about death and guarantees reincarnation. If you want to be totally free of rebirth and re-own your total freedom of will, you have to let go of everything and be true to yourself, true to your freedom, regardless of anybody else, what anybody else is choosing, anybody else is making happen. You've got to let go of it. And the choice is your responsibility. Heaven is a choice I must make. You must choose. Your only responsibility is to choose the atonement for yourself. And choosing it for yourself does not choose it for other people because they have free will. Jesus does not violate your free will by choosing atonement. It doesn't force you into heaven. You still have to freely, willingly come by your free will. Jesus said to me yesterday, you can't force anybody to accept you. If they don't want to accept you and they're not going to accept you, you've got to accept that about them and be at peace about that. Let it go. Stop trying to get them to accept you if they don't want to. This is how you set yourself free from all these bonds and chains and these accusations of other people being the one to decide whether you go back to God or not. They're just excuses. You gotta own up to this and be honest. So choose again. Be free. Remember that you have total perfect freedom. So does everybody else. And if you can just remember that essence, that, person over here is free of this person over here. They've got no business being up in other people's business, and you've got to allow them. Otherwise, you can't allow yourself. So let go, be free, choose again, choose God's will, which is happiness, and there you go. See you next time. Bye.